Grade 12, in this video we are going to answer the questions that might come out in your exam. Here is the question that says, discuss the demand and supply side policies used by the government to smooth out business cycles. What I'm expected to do there, you only need that fundamental knowledge of your AD, of your aggregate demand, and the knowledge of the aggregate supply. So basically you are using the demand side approach and the supply side approach. And remember, before you answer any question in economics, you have to bring these two graphs in mind. You need to bring these two graphs in mind. Here is your business cycle. You assume that here is the time of the growth, here is the GDP. And then you bring a second diagram which shows an economy where there is a supply and demand. What's going on there? You assume that the economy is at equilibrium at Q naught and at P naught. Okay, on the vertical axis, remember to clearly label your prices, and on the horizontal axis, you've got a quantity, output, or employment. So what's going on there? The question says, discuss the demand side and the supply side policies used by the government to smooth out the business cycles. So as I say, you bring this mental image, you assume that here is your business cycle, and we've got trough, this is the trough point, this is the peak point, trough point, and peak point. And you assume that, as the question says, that the economy has to be smoothened out by the government, maybe by the use of demand and supply side policies. So these images are going to help you to understand how will the smoothing out of the business cycle shift the demand or move the economic activity. So firstly, you focus on the demand side policies. What are the demand side policies that can be used to grow the economy? You firstly go straight to your AD. What is AD? We all know that AD is equal to C plus I plus G plus X minus Z. You bring this information to your mind, and then you assume a position where there is an increase in one of these components. Let's say that increase is on the government spending. When there is an increase in government spending, what's going to happen? The consumption spending in the economy will increase. The demand for goods in the economy will increase. The employment will increase. And eventually, the prices are going up. And how can we illustrate that in a graph? That is where you use your fundamental knowledge, your basic knowledge of the economy. So when the government increases, when the government spending increases, the demand for goods will increase. We all know that. When the demand for goods increase, the employment in the economy will increase. And when the employment in the economy increases, the prices eventually, because we are also interested on the prices, the prices go up. In terms of a diagram that can be illustrated by the rightward shift of the demand curve, we can clearly see in the economy or in the demand and supply side graph that when there is an increase in government spending, we clearly see an increase in the quantity demanded of goods. And then as the chains of events tells us that there is an increase in prices, we can see the prices going up from P to P1. And we see a new equilibrium point, which is E1. Therefore, we see an increase in employment, in output, an increase in the prices. And with your knowledge of your business cycle, we assume that the economy is at a trough point. But when there is an increase in government spending, as the employment increases, we will move along the business, along the economic line from trough. Maybe we can see an economy recovering. We are at the recovery point. This is what is going to happen. Before you answer that question, you need this information. So the demand side approach will increase the economy. And when the prices are going up, there will be an inflation. And when there's an inflation, the country has to act on ways to cap the inflation. When the inflation is capped, then we can see an unemployment rises. When the unemployment rises, or the relationship between inflation and unemployment can be illustrated by the Phillips curve. This is what you need to talk about. So in your introduction, you have to say, the essay below, here is your introduction. Your introduction becomes clear if you have this information. You will say the demand side policies are the policies that are used by the government to stimulate the economy or smooth the business cycle so that the economy can grow. So when the economy grows, we can see the levels of employment increasing. And when the levels of employment increases, the prices are also going up. And when the prices are up, there will be an inflation. And inflation and the prices can be illustrated by the Phillips curve. Here is a situation that can be illustrated by that can illustrate the relationship between the inflation and unemployment. So the Phillips curve tends to be backward but downward sloping. Here is the Phillips curve. On the vertical axis, we see the inflation rate. Let's say the inflation rate was 10% before the increase in government spending. And then the unemployment rate was 20%. But then what happened? The government spending has been increased from this point to that one. So when the government spending increases through the multiplier, the prices of goods are going up. And we see an increase in inflation, let's say to 12%. And what's going to happen to the levels of unemployment? The unemployment will decrease because the levels of employment are high, but the inflation is also high. So the unemployment will decrease from 20 to 15. But if for some reasons the government acts to cap the inflation or to combat inflation, so this curve will shift to the left. That is D3. Here is an act on combating prices because we do not want too much inflation. And then the government is going to use fiscal and monetary policy to do that. And we can see the prices going down and the quantity demanded and employment going down. So when that takes place, we will see on the Phillips curve that the inflation rate will decrease because of a decrease in prices here. When the inflation decreases, let's say it decreases from 10 to 5, we see a level of unemployment increases from 20 to 25. So this is what is going to happen. But if for some reasons there is an increase in inflation that is coming from the supply side, the factors of production, the cost of the factors of production is increasing, we won't see a movement along the Phillips curve. There will be a shift of the Phillips curve to the right. We are going to talk about the supply side measures that can be put to increase the economy. But if those measures are put to increase the economy, the Phillips curve is going to shift to the right. You are going to see a P1. And then what's going to happen when the inflation comes from supply side in the first instance, we will see a leftward shift of the supply curve, showing high prices and higher unemployment. Here is the shift. At S1 there is an inflation. At S1 there is an inflation and low levels of employment. And this, in terms of a Phillips curve, can be shown by a rightward shift. Here is an inflation. This part is shown by, for instance, from 10 to 12. It shows an inflation rate, an increase of the prices. But then this size from Q to Q1 is shown by the levels of unemployment that are going up. You can see the levels of unemployment were at this point, but then when the inflation rises, we can see there is an increase in inflation followed by an increase in unemployment rate. So this is called the stagflation. I thank you so much for watching the video. In the next video, we'll be explaining the arguments in favor of protectionism.